So in this video here, I'm going to try and show you what an SLG 3000 looks like while it's being used with a Sega Dreamcast. And if you're not familiar with what an SLG 3000 is, it's this little device here. And what it does is it basically allows you to have scan lines on your modern LCD or plasma screen TV. So similar to what you'd have seen back in the day in an old arcade, or maybe if you're using a retro console with a tube TV. This will recreate those little black lines that go across the screen. So really nice thing to have if you're into your retro gaming and you want to use a modern TV. So I'm going to be using it with my Sega Dreamcast VGA box, and the nice thing about the Dreamcast is it natively outputs a VGA signal. So all you need is a little converter like this here with a VGA output. You can either get the official Sega version, or like me, you can just buy one of these third-party ones, and the SLG plugs directly into that there, and then you've got the regular VGA cable comes out here and goes into your TV or your computer monitor. And on the SLG itself, you've got these three little pots that you can adjust, and that increases or turns down the effect of the scan lines. You can also switch it on and off, and there's a couple of little dip switches here for different settings as well, but very simple thing to use. So the games I've got here are quite a nice broad selection of types of games to show off the different effects you can get from using the scanline generator. And the first one here is Sega Smash Pack, which is basically the official Dreamcast or Sega Mega Drive emulator for the Dreamcast. And the game I'm going to show you is Streets of Rage 2, and yeah, works really well with that. The next game here I've got is a game you probably wouldn't really associate with scan lines, and that's Dead or Alive 2. So it's like a 3D fighting game, but again it works very well with the SLG 3000. Another game you probably wouldn't associate with scan lines is Jet Set Radio. Again, 2D cell shaded graphics seem to work very well with it. And the final game that you probably would associate with scan lines in arcades is this one here. It's Street Fighter 3 or Street Fighter Alpha 3, which is obviously a 2D sprite based fighting game. So I'm going to show you some footage of all of these. I've already filmed the footage, and the thing to remember here is I'm just pointing the camera directly at the TV, so it's not going to look its best. In real life it looks probably 5-10 times better than what you can see on the screen, on the screen of the camera or the screen of the computer you're watching it on, whatever. And by the time it gets uploaded to YouTube and they've converted it and done their thing to it, it's going to look even worse. But hopefully this video will give you a rough idea of what you can expect from using a device like this. I'm really impressed with it, and I use it for all my Dreamcast gaming now. I also have other bits and pieces here, so I can hook it up to the likes of my Mega Drive. I've got a device here called a Sync Strike, which allows me to plug in like an RGB SCART cable here, and then from there I can plug this into a scaler, this thing here, and then I can plug the SLG 3000 into that and get scan lines on my LCD screen. For now, I'm just going to do the Dreamcast, and just bear in mind that the quality might not look that great on screen when you're watching this back on YouTube or whatever, but in real life it genuinely does look a lot better, and I'm sure a lot of people that already have these will agree with me, especially if you're using the Dreamcast VGA box. They'll know just how good this looks. And I'll leave some links in the description if you want to know more about all these devices here, but yeah, I'll just get straight into showing you some footage. I'll start by showing you the character select screen for Streets of Rage 2 because it's quite a good example of what the SLG is capable of. So we just take a look down here at Blaze. You can hopefully tell that the SLG is enabled. You can see black lines running through the character there, and if we just look up at the text, you can see the black lines running through that as well. So if I just disable the SLG, you can see the difference it makes. So each of these letters is made up of a different coloured line, and they all basically run into each other without the SLG enabled. So if you just turn it back on, You see the difference it makes? It gives it that real arcade look, which is very, very nice. And if we look down here at the character as well, without the SLG, Blaze becomes quite blocky looking. You can still see every individual pixel, but they all run into each other. They're not as defined, but turn it on and you can see the effect it has. Much, much nicer. And if we look up here, you can see Max and Axel. So if I turn it off, you can see here, turn it back on, you can see all the individual pixels that make up Axel's hair. And again, you can see the text as well. Turn it off, becomes a lot blockier. Turn it back on, and I'll quickly shift over to Axel. You can see him here. So SLG is enabled. Nice clear sprite there. Turn it off and he becomes quite blocky looking. Turn it back on. There we go. Here's a look at some gameplay, and if I get a bit closer here, you'll hopefully be able to tell the difference that the SLG can make. So if you just look at this bad guy here, you can see all the detail in his outfit. You can see his ripped jeans and his boots and the knife he's holding, the individual pixels that make up his hair. And over here you've got Blaze throwing some sort of fireball, and you can see the individual strands of hair there. And if I just pan back a bit and I'll turn this off, so that's without. And if we take a look now, all the pixels, they kind of run into each other. They're not as defined. Still very clear, but they're a bit more blocky now, I suppose would be the way of describing it. So if I just turn it back on, you can see the difference it makes there. It's off and on, and the same over here for Blaze. Off. You can see our arm there. All the skin coloured pixels, they all really just bleed into each other. And with that enabled, it defines it a lot better. So if we look up here as well, we've got the timer and the text, the score counter as well. So turn it off and it's a lot more blocky. You can see that there. And turn it back on. It breaks it all up again. Same with the backgrounds and the yeah, you can see that lantern there as well. Turn it off and turn it back on again. Makes quite a big difference. So I'll just unpause it here and you'll hopefully get a look at it in action. So the further back from the screen, the less noticeable the scan lines are. I mean, you can, if you usually sit on the couch quite far from the TV, you might not notice it as much, but if you sit quite close to the TV, then it definitely makes quite a big difference. You can see the car there as well, number plate. But it looks great, really nice detail. And I'll quickly turn it off here again so you can see. So that's it without. And that's it with. Hopefully this is being picked up by the camera okay, but... So taking a quick look at some of the more traditional 3D type games you tend to find in the Dreamcast, I've got a copy of Dead or Alive 2 in the system, and as you can see, I've got the scan lines enabled again, and you can see in Kasumi's face there that there are scan lines, and again in the text here and the different characters. So I'll quickly turn it off, but for the 3D type games what I tend to do is turn down the intensity of the scan lines just a bit. They're not needed as much. I suppose I use it more as a complementary effect on the 3D games. And again, I'm going to use that word again, it just adds a bit of extra definition to the character models and the graphics. So, I mean, overall, these games look excellent through the VGA cable as they are, but with the scan lines it can just add a little bit of an extra edge to it. And I'll quickly show you some gameplay here as well. To try and better explain what I mean when I say giving the illusion of adding extra definition, I've just paused the game here, and if you look over at Kasumi, if you look down at her feet, and this may or may not come across on camera, I'll try my best anyway. If you look here, there's some snow effect going on both feet, and there's also some jagged lines just around the edges. And what I can do is enable the SLG, and as I say, this may or may not come across on camera, but what it does is it almost gives like a crosshatch effect and adds a bit more depth to the shadows, and also these little bits of snow are a little more defined. And also up here you can better see her individual fingers and the logo on her back, and overall it just gives the illusion, I suppose, or the effect of adding extra definition to the picture, the image as a whole. So that's what I mean when I'm saying giving the illusion of extra or better definition. Another game you wouldn't typically associate with scanlines is Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio, but because of its 2D cel-shaded art style, it seems to work very well, and I'll give you a quick look at that right now. So if I just get a bit closer here to Gum's rollerblade, so you can see the lines running through everything there, and the floor, the graffiti on the floor as well. So if I just turn it off, you can see the difference it makes. So if you look at the jagged edges around the boots here, if I just turn on the scan lines, it does a very nice job of smoothing that out, and overall it looks very nice indeed. If I move up here, I'll show you this handrail here as well. That's a good example. So the scan lines are on. If I turn them off, you can see down either edge you've got these jaggies, but with the scan lines enabled, it really smooths them out, and overall it looks great in my opinion. So you can see the text there and the pinball machine in the background. So that's without, and that's with. The final game I'm going to show you here is one you probably more likely associate with scanlines and the arcades, and that's Street Fighter Alpha 3. So if I just come in a bit closer here, you should be able to see the scanlines and all the character icons there. Every pixel's nicely defined and quite clear to see. It gives a very nice effect. So just come over here, you can see in the face of this character the individual scan lines, and if I turn it off, you can see it makes quite a big difference. Turn it back on. Same over here with these. If I turn it off, everything becomes a lot blockier, less defined. Turn it back on and it looks much better. At least it looks better in my opinion. So here you can see in Honda's face, that's with the scan lines enabled, and that's without. Take a look down here as well at the character. So without and with, and over here that's without and that's with. And the VGA cable makes a huge difference as well, but the SLG just gives it that extra edge. So the problem with trying to capture these scan lines on camera is I have to get very close to the screen, like 2 or 3 inches away from it, and what that'll end up doing is creating a strobing effect on the camera, and it'll distort the image, so you won't really get the full effect. So in reality you're going to either be standing or sitting a good distance away from the screen, and when you take a step back the overall effect is much more impressive. So this is generally where I'd be sitting if I'm playing my Dreamcast or my Mega Drive or whatever. So I'll just zoom in here and you can maybe see the scan lines a bit better from this angle, this distance. So the closer in I get, the more the strobing effect starts to distort the image, and If I zoom out, you get a better idea of how it really looks in real life. At least from me looking through the viewfinder here, this is a more accurate depiction of the effect. Hopefully this video has done at least a half decent job of showing off the abilities of the SLG 3000, and personally I highly recommend checking it out if you're into retro gaming and you maybe want to hook up an older system to a newer TV but you want to keep the look of an old arcade cab with the scan lines. Then this is definitely worth checking out. It's not the only solution, but it's one of the cheapest and easiest, and it will work with near enough all the old systems. So I can use this with my Mega Drive or my Saturn and get the same type of effect here. And yeah, very impressed with the performance of it overall. So I'll quickly just show you one more time what it looks like without. So turn it off, you can see the characters look a bit blocky there, and turn it back on, you get the definition again, if my camera will stay in focus. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.